The call that changed everything. Officer Nathan Pierce rubbed his temples as the dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. Unit 17, report of 2 individuals loitering under the Oak Ridge overpass. Possible disturbance. Respond when available. Nathan sighed, tossing his half-eaten sandwich onto the passenger seat. His shift had been long, uneventful, and marked by a nagging headache he couldn't shake. Calls like these were routine, almost mindless. Still, it was part of the job. He flipped on his cruiser's lights and maneuvered through the light evening traffic. The Oak Ridge overpass wasn't in the worst part of town, but it wasn't far off. Over the years, the underpass had become a common shelter for the city's homeless, a place to disappear from the world's harsh gaze. When Nathan arrived, the scene was bathed in the dim orange glow of a nearby street lamp. He spotted 2 figures sitting against the concrete wall, a shopping cart parked beside them and stuffed with tattered blankets and random belongings. The air was crisp, the kind that nipped at your skin and made you wonder how anyone could survive outside all night. He parked his cruiser and stepped out, the crunch of his boots on gravel breaking the silence. "Evening," he called out, his tone calm but authoritative. "This area's off limits. You'll need to move along." The figures didn't respond immediately. Nathan approached cautiously, his hand resting instinctively near his holster. He'd learned not to assume anything, even when the situation seemed harmless. As he got closer, the details became clearer. The 2 individuals were young men, barely adults by the looks of it, with thin frames and worn, patched-up clothes that clung to them like second skin. Despite the chill, neither wore anything heavy, just threadbare jackets that looked like they'd seen too many winters. "Did you hear me?" Nathan said, his voice firmer now. One of them looked up, and Nathan froze. It wasn't fear or suspicion that rooted him in place. It was recognition, or at least something eerily close to it. The young man staring back at him had sharp cheekbones, piercing blue eyes, and a mop of dark hair that stuck out in all directions, much like Nathan's own hair did on bad mornings. For a moment, Nathan felt as though he were looking into a younger, rougher version of himself. He shook his head, trying to clear the thought. Coincidences happened, he told himself. The young man nudged the other figure beside him, who looked up as well. Nathan's chest tightened. The second man bore the same haunting resemblance. The first young man finally spoke, his voice hoarse but steady. "Are you Officer Nathan Pierce?" Nathan blinked. "Who's asking?" The young man reached into his jacket, and Nathan's hand instinctively moved to his weapon. "Whoa, easy," the young man said, holding up a hand. "It's just a photo." Nathan relaxed slightly as the young man pulled out a small, creased photograph. He held it out, and Nathan hesitated before taking it. The picture was old, the edges frayed and faded from years of handling. It showed a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile, standing with her arms around 2 young boys. The boys were about 3 or 4, with matching grins and unmistakable blue eyes. Nathan turned the photo over, and his heart skipped a beat. On the back, written in neat, looping handwriting, were the words, "Liam, Logan, and Mom, 2004. "What is this?" Nathan asked, his voice quieter now. The second young man, the quieter of the 2, spoke for the first time. "It's you," he said simply. "We think you're our brother." Nathan felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. He handed the photograph back, trying to steady his hands. "Listen," he said carefully, "I don't know what you're trying to pull, but—" "We're not lying," the first young man interrupted. "Our mom, your mom, told us about you. She said you were taken away when you were little. She gave us this photo and told us to find you if we ever could. We've been searching for years." Nathan shook his head, his pulse racing. "My name is Nathan Pierce. I don't know anything about what you're talking about." The first young man gave a bitter laugh. "Pierce? Is that the name they gave you when they adopted you? Nathan flinched. He hadn't heard anyone refer to his adoption in years, not since he'd buried the pieces of his past deep enough to forget. But now, staring at these two strangers, these two faces that looked so much like his own, he couldn't ignore the storm of emotions rising within him. I don't remember anything about, before, Nathan admitted reluctantly. If you're telling the truth, I'm going to need more than a photograph. The first young man, Liam, nodded. We figured. We're not here to mess with you. We just want answers, same as you. The second young man, Logan, added quietly, Mom always said family was everything. She wanted us to find you. We're just trying to do what she asked. Nathan studied their faces, his mind racing. Was this real? Could it be? He'd spent so long pushing the past away that he wasn't sure he could handle what might come next. All right, he said finally. If you're serious about this, we'll start with a DNA test. But until then, you can't stay out here. It's not safe. Liam exchanged a glance with Logan before nodding. We'll go wherever you think is best. Nathan sighed. There's a shelter downtown. I'll take you there. The two young men gathered their few belongings and climbed into the back of Nathan's cruiser. As he drove them to the shelter, the photograph sat on the dashboard, taunting him with questions he wasn't ready to answer. For the first time in years, Nathan felt the cracks in the wall he'd built around his past. And he had a sinking feeling that those cracks were about to grow wider. Fractured memories. The drive back to the precinct was quiet, the weight of unspoken questions thick in the air. Nathan's hands tightened around the steering wheel as Liam and Logan sat in the back seat, their presence both surreal and unsettling. He stole glances at them in the rearview mirror, still struggling to process the bizarre resemblance. They were young, barely out of their teens, but life had etched hard lines on their faces. Their eyes, though piercing and familiar, carried a weariness that spoke of struggles Nathan couldn't yet comprehend. You guys been on the streets long? Nathan finally asked, breaking the silence. Liam, sitting closest to the window, shrugged. Long enough. Logan, quieter and more reserved, added, Mom tried to keep us together after everything fell apart. But when she passed, things got harder. Nathan felt a pang of guilt. He had no memory of their mother, no image of her voice, her smile, or the warmth they spoke of. All he knew was the family he'd grown up with, the Pierces, who had given him a stable home and unconditional love. But the cracks in that stability had always been there, hidden beneath his desire to forget. Back at the precinct, Nathan led the twins into a small, sterile interview room with gray walls and a single metal table bolted to the floor. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Take a seat, Nathan said, motioning to the chairs. Liam and Logan sat down, their eyes scanning the room. Nathan remained standing, arms crossed, trying to maintain some semblance of control over a situation that felt like it was slipping through his fingers. All right, Nathan began, start from the beginning. How did you find me? Liam leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Mom always talked about you. She said they took you away when you were little. We didn't really understand back then, but as we got older, she told us more, how the state got involved and placed you with another family. She never stopped looking for you. Logan nodded. She kept this box of old letters and papers. After she passed, we found it. That's how we traced the name Nicholas Lane to you. Nathan stiffened at the mention of his birth name. It felt foreign on their lips, like a relic from a past he had buried deep. I haven't gone by that name in over 20 years, Nathan admitted. The Pierces adopted me when I was 5. I don't remember much before that. Liam's expression softened. We figured you might not. But we had to try. Nathan pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of the picture they'd shown him earlier. Mind if I keep this for reference? Go ahead, Liam said. It's the only copy we have. Nathan studied the image again. The woman's face tugged at something deep inside him, a whisper of a memory he couldn't quite grasp. I'm going to need to run a DNA test, Nathan said. It's the only way to confirm what you're saying. We're ready for that, Liam agreed. Whatever it takes. Nathan nodded. In the meantime, I want to hear more about your lives. Where have you been staying? Liam and Logan exchanged a glance. Wherever we could, Logan admitted. Shelters, abandoned buildings. We've had a few close calls with trouble, but we stuck together. Nathan's jaw clenched. He couldn't shake the image of these two young men fending for themselves on the streets while he had lived a relatively privileged life with the Pierces. You said Mom passed, Nathan said carefully. What happened? Liam's gaze darkened. Cancer. She fought it for a long time, but the system didn't make it easy for her to get the care she needed. We were still kids when she got sick, and after she died, everything went downhill. Nathan felt a surge of anger, not at the twins, but at the system that had failed them. The same system that had taken him away from his biological family and left them to fend for themselves. I'm sorry, Nathan said, his voice softer now. Liam shook his head. It's not your fault. We're just glad we found you. After arranging for the DNA test and securing temporary shelter for Liam and Logan, Nathan returned to his desk, his thoughts a tangled mess. The photograph sat on his desk, a silent reminder of the past he'd tried to forget. He stared at his computer screen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. With a deep breath, he began searching through old records, adoption files, court documents, anything that might shed light on his early childhood. What he found left him shaken. The court documents revealed that his biological mother, Emily Lane, had fought desperately to keep him. She had petitioned the court multiple times, trying to prove she was capable of caring for him despite her financial struggles. But the system had deemed her unfit, citing instability and a history of hardship. Nathan had been placed in foster care and eventually adopted by the Pierces. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of the revelations pressing down on him. His mother hadn't abandoned him, she had fought for him until the very end. A sudden memory surfaced, hazy and fragmented, a woman's voice singing softly, the scent of lavender, and the feeling of being held close. Nathan blinked, his throat tightening. Was that her? Had some part of him held on to that memory all these years? Before he could dwell on it further, his phone buzzed. It was a text from the lab. DNA results will be available within 48 hours. Nathan exhaled slowly. He wasn't sure what the results would reveal, but one thing was certain, his life would never be the same. As he sat in the dim glow of his desk lamp, Nathan realized that the past he had tried so hard to forget had finally caught up with him. And whether he was ready or not, it was time to face it head-on. Unraveling truths. The precinct was quiet as night deepened, the hum of office equipment and the occasional shuffle of papers the only sounds. Nathan sat at his desk, the flickering glow of his monitor casting long shadows across the room. His eyes burned from hours of searching through records, but his mind refused to rest. Liam and Logan had been escorted to a secure shelter for the night. The arrangements were temporary, but Nathan had promised to check on them first thing in the morning. The twins had accepted his help with a surprising mix of gratitude and wariness, a look Nathan knew all too well. Trust didn't come easy when life had made you fight for every scrap of dignity. But tonight, it wasn't just about them. It was about the haunting possibility that their story might be true. Nathan leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head. His gaze drifted to the worn photograph propped against his keyboard. The faces in the image stirred something deep within him, a longing he couldn't fully name. His phone vibrated, cutting through his thoughts. It was Detective Harper, his longtime colleague and friend. "Pierce," Nathan answered. "You still at the precinct?" Harper's gravelly voice came through the line. Yeah. Figured. I saw your light on when I passed by. Everything okay? Nathan hesitated. Harper was one of the few people he trusted completely, but this situation was personal, messy in a way that police work rarely prepared you for. I'm working through something, Nathan admitted. You want to talk about it, or should I mind my business? Harper asked, a note of concern in his voice. Nathan sighed. It's complicated. Family stuff. Ah, Harper said knowingly. The kind of stuff that keeps you up at night? Yeah. Well, if you need anything, you know where to find me, Harper offered. Thanks, Harper. I'll catch up with you later. After ending the call, Nathan stared at the photograph again. The truth was, he wasn't sure how much of this he wanted to share with anyone, not until he had concrete answers. The following morning, Nathan arrived at the shelter just as the sun broke through the gray clouds. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp pavement. Inside, the shelter was bustling with activity. Volunteers moved efficiently, distributing breakfast trays and warm drinks. Nathan spotted Liam and Logan sitting at a corner table, their heads bent in quiet conversation. They looked up as he approached. Morning, Nathan greeted. Hey, Liam said, offering a small smile. Logan nodded silently. How'd you sleep? Nathan asked. Better than we have in a while, Liam admitted. Good. Nathan pulled out a chair and sat across from them. The DNA test results should be ready soon. Until then, I want to hear more about your story. You said you've been searching for me for years? Liam nodded. After Mom passed, we didn't have much left. Just her stories and that photo. We bounced around foster homes for a bit, but none of them stuck. When we aged out, we hit the road. Every lead we followed either went cold or led to a dead end. But we never gave up. Nathan frowned. How did you survive? Logan's voice was low but steady. We did what we had to. Odd jobs, some under-the-table work. But there were times when we didn't have anything but each other. Nathan's chest tightened. He couldn't imagine growing up without the stability the Pierces had given him. I wish I had known, Nathan said quietly. We don't blame you, Liam said. You were just a kid. None of this was your fault. Nathan nodded, though guilt still gnawed at him. Tell me more about Mom. What was she like? Liam's expression softened. She was strong. Kind, but tough when she had to be. She worked hard, even when things got bad. And she never stopped talking about you. You were her light, even after they took you away. Logan added, she kept saying that family was everything. That someday we'd find you and make things right. Nathan swallowed hard, the weight of their words settling over him. Later that day, back at the precinct, Nathan's phone buzzed with a notification. The DNA results were ready. His heart raced as he logged into the secure portal. The report loaded slowly, the seconds stretching into an eternity. When the results appeared on the screen, Nathan's breath caught in his throat. 99.9% probability of biological sibling match. It was undeniable. Liam and Logan were his brothers. Nathan leaned back in his chair, the gravity of the truth washing over him. All these years, he had believed he was alone in the world, disconnected from his past. But now, that past had found him, and it came with a new sense of responsibility. He stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket. He needed to see them. At the shelter, Nathan found Liam and Logan sitting on a bench outside, soaking in the rare winter sunlight. They looked up as he approached, their expressions guarded. You got the results, didn't you? Liam asked. Nathan nodded. Yeah. And? Logan pressed. Nathan took a deep breath. It's a match. We're brothers. A moment of silence hung between them, heavy with emotion. Liam's face broke into a wide grin. I knew it, he said, his voice thick. Logan's eyes glistened, though he quickly blinked the tears away. Mom was right, he whispered. Nathan felt his own throat tighten. Yeah, she was. They stood there, three men bound by blood and a history that was just beginning to be rewritten. I don't know what the future holds, Nathan admitted, but I'm not letting you go now that I've found you. Liam clapped him on the back. That's all we ever wanted. Logan added quietly, family sticks together, right? Always, Nathan promised. As they stood there, Nathan felt something shift inside him. A fracture in his heart that had been there for years finally beginning to heal. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt like he was heading in the right direction, confronting shadows of the past. The chill of early morning lingered as Nathan drove through the streets of the city. His thoughts raced faster than the hum of the engine. The DNA results had confirmed it, Liam and Logan were his biological brothers. Yet the revelation brought as many questions as answers. Why had their mother fought so hard only to be ignored by the system? How had his adoption been handled, and what role had the state played in severing ties with his birth family? Nathan had always trusted the system he worked for, but now doubt gnawed at him like a persistent ache. Glancing at the dashboard clock, Nathan knew it was still too early to reach out to the Pierces. They had always been supportive, but this revelation would hit them hard. His adoptive parents had never hidden the fact that he was adopted, but the existence of siblings had never been part of the narrative. Pulling into the shelter's parking lot, Nathan spotted Liam and Logan sitting on a stone bench near the entrance, steam rising from 2 paper cups of coffee in their hands. Their faces brightened when they saw him approach. Morning, Nathan greeted, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. Hey, Liam said, handing Nathan a third cup. We got you one. Black, right? Nathan raised an eyebrow. How'd you know? Liam grinned. Call it a brother's intuition. Nathan chuckled, taking a sip. The warmth of the coffee cut through the cold. Thanks. So, Logan began cautiously, what now? Nathan exhaled slowly. I need answers. I want to find out exactly what happened with our mother and why we were separated. There's more to this story, and I'm not stopping until I get the full picture. Liam's expression hardened. We're with you. Whatever it takes. Logan nodded in agreement. It's time we got the truth. Back at the precinct, Nathan pulled every string he could to access the sealed adoption records. It wasn't easy. Bureaucratic red tape wrapped those files tighter than a vault. But as a seasoned detective, Nathan knew how to navigate the system. Hours later, he sat at his desk, surrounded by stacks of yellowed papers and faded photographs. Liam and Logan had joined him, their eyes scanning the documents with a mix of curiosity and unease. Look at this, Nathan said, pointing to a court document dated nearly 3 decades ago. Our mother, Emily Lane, filed multiple petitions to regain custody. But every time, the court ruled against her. Logan frowned. Why? What was their justification? Financial instability, Nathan said grimly. They claimed she couldn't provide a stable home environment. Liam slammed his fist on the desk. That's crap. She worked herself to the bone for us. We didn't have much, but we had love. Isn't that supposed to count for something? Nathan's jaw tightened. It should have. But the system doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. As they dug deeper, a name kept appearing in the documents, Judge Arthur Gaines. He had presided over multiple hearings involving their mother. Nathan's eyes narrowed. I know that name. He retired years ago, but he was notorious for being harsh on cases involving single mothers. Sounds like someone we need to talk to, Logan said. I agree, Nathan said. But we'll need to tread carefully. Judges don't like their decisions being questioned, especially decades later. The next day, Nathan arranged a meeting with Judge Gaines at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. The retired judge, now in his 70s, had a stern face softened only slightly by age. "You must be Detective Pierce," Gaines said as Nathan approached. "That's right," Nathan confirmed, extending his hand. "Thanks for meeting me." They sat down at a corner table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. "What's this about?" Gaines asked, his tone wary. Nathan took a deep breath. "It's about a case you presided over nearly 30 years ago, Emily Lane versus the state." Gaines's expression darkened. "I remember that case. Tough situation." "Tough for who?" Nathan pressed. "The mother who fought to keep her child or the system that tore us apart?" Gaines sighed heavily. "Look, I made the decision based on the evidence presented at the time. Emily Lane was a good woman, but she was struggling. Social services painted a grim picture. My hands were tied." "Did you ever question their motives?" Nathan asked. Gaines's gaze sharpened. "What are you implying?" Nathan leaned forward. "I'm implying that maybe the system didn't just fail my mother, it actively worked against her. I need to know why." Gaines hesitated, then said quietly, "There was pressure back then to move cases through quickly. Social services had quotas to meet, and private adoption agencies were involved behind the scenes. I didn't like it, but I couldn't prove anything." Nathan's stomach turned. "So you just went along with it?" Gaines met his gaze. "I regret a lot of things, Detective. But I can't change the past. All I can do is tell you the truth now." Nathan nodded, his resolve hardening. "That's all I needed to hear." As Nathan left the cafe, his phone buzzed with a call from Harper. "Pierce," Nathan answered. "We've got a problem," Harper said urgently. "Someone broke into the shelter last night." Nathan's heart raced. "Liam and Logan?" "They're fine, but I think someone's sending a message. You need to get down here." Nathan hung up and sprinted to his car, his mind racing. This was no coincidence. Someone didn't want him digging into the past, and they were willing to go to dangerous lengths to stop him. But Nathan had faced danger before, and he wasn't about to back down now. As he sped toward the shelter, one thought burned in his mind: the truth will come out, no matter what it takes. Secrets in the shadows. Nathan's tires screeched as he pulled into the shelter's parking lot, heart pounding with urgency. A cluster of volunteers and shelter residents had gathered near the entrance, their anxious murmurs blending with the wail of a distant police siren. Yellow crime scene tape flapped in the cold breeze, cordoning off shattered windows and debris scattered across the concrete. Harper stood near the door, his broad frame tense as he spoke with a crime scene tech. When he spotted Nathan, he broke away and approached with a grim expression. "Glad you got here fast," Harper said. "What happened?" Nathan demanded. "Break-in around 3 in the morning," Harper explained. "Whoever it was didn't bother with subtlety. Smashed their way through the back door and ransacked the common areas." Nathan's jaw clenched. "Any idea what they were looking for?" "Hard to say," Harper admitted. "But here's the kicker, nothing valuable was taken. No cash, no electronics. Just a bunch of papers scattered everywhere." Nathan's gut tightened. This wasn't a random act of vandalism. Someone was sending a message. "Where are Liam and Logan?" Nathan asked. "In the rec room," Harper said. "They're shaken up but unharmed." Nathan nodded and made his way inside, navigating through the chaos of overturned furniture and broken glass. He found the twins sitting on a battered couch, their expressions grim. "You okay?" Nathan asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Liam nodded slowly. "Yeah. Just a little rattled. Logan's fists were clenched on his knees. This wasn't random, was it? Nathan didn't sugarcoat it. No. Someone doesn't want us digging into the past. Logan's eyes darkened. Let them try. We've survived worse. Nathan admired their resilience but knew they were walking a dangerous path. We're not going to back down, he assured them. But we need to be smart about this. Harper joined them, his brow furrowed. Got something you might want to see, he said, holding up an evidence bag containing a crumpled piece of paper. Nathan took the bag and examined the note inside. The words were scrawled in jagged, hurried handwriting. Stop looking, or you'll regret it. Nathan's blood ran cold. This was no idle threat. I'm having the lab run it for prints, Harper said. But I wouldn't hold my breath. Nathan nodded. Thanks, Harper. I'll take it from here. Later that day, Nathan, Liam, and Logan convened at Nathan's apartment. The cozy space was a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind at the shelter. Nathan spread the documents they had salvaged across the dining table, determined to find the missing puzzle pieces. We need to figure out who's behind this, Nathan said. Someone connected to our past doesn't want the truth coming out. Liam tapped a photograph of Judge Gaines from an old newspaper clipping. You think the judge was telling the truth? I do, Nathan said. But he mentioned something about private adoption agencies being involved. That's a lead worth following. Logan's brow furrowed. How do we even start with that? Nathan pulled out his laptop. There's a database of defunct adoption agencies that might give us a clue. Let's see if we can find any names that match the timeline of my adoption. They worked in silence, the only sounds being the clack of keys and the rustle of paper. Hours passed, but persistence paid off. Got something, Nathan announced. A place called Horizon Family Services. They shut down about 20 years ago after a series of legal scandals involving unethical adoption practices. Liam leaned over to read the screen. That sounds promising, well, in a messed up way. Nathan's fingers flew across the keyboard as he searched for more information. One of the key players was a man named Victor Caldwell. He was the director at the time and was accused of falsifying records and coercing parents into giving up their kids. Logan's eyes narrowed. Where is he now? Nathan's lips pressed into a thin line. Still alive, living in a gated community just outside the city. You think he's the one behind the threats? Liam asked. Maybe, Nathan said. But there's only one way to find out. The next afternoon, Nathan parked his car outside the pristine gates of Caldwell's upscale neighborhood. The contrast between this world of manicured lawns and the streets where Liam and Logan had struggled to survive was stark. You sure about this? Logan asked from the passenger seat. We don't have a choice, Nathan said. They buzzed the intercom at Caldwell's address, and a stately voice crackled through the speaker. Yes? Victor Caldwell? Nathan said. We need to talk. I'm sorry, I don't take unsolicited visits. It's about Horizon Family Services, Nathan interrupted. And Emily Lane. There was a long pause before the gate creaked open. Caldwell's house was a sprawling estate with ivy-covered walls and towering oak trees. The man himself met them at the door, his silver hair neatly combed and his sharp blue eyes wary. I was wondering when someone would come knocking, Caldwell said, his voice smooth but guarded. Nathan didn't waste time. You were involved in my adoption, and you played a role in separating me from my family. Caldwell's lips thinned. That was a long time ago. I was following orders. Whose orders? Nathan demanded. Caldwell sighed and gestured for them to come inside. You might want to sit down for this. As they settled into the lavish sitting room, Caldwell poured himself a drink. Horizon was more than just an adoption agency. It was part of a larger network that profited from placing children with affluent families, families willing to pay top dollar for a quick adoption. Nathan's stomach churned. And my mother was collateral damage? She was targeted because she was vulnerable, Caldwell admitted. The system knew she couldn't fight back. They fabricated evidence to make her look unfit. Logan's voice was cold. You ruined lives. Caldwell's gaze hardened. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, Nathan said fiercely. And you made the wrong one. Caldwell downed his drink. You've stirred up a hornet's nest, detective. The people who ran that network are still out there, and they don't appreciate loose ends. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Are they the ones who broke into the shelter? Most likely, Caldwell said. And they won't stop until you back off. Nathan stood, his resolve unshaken. I'm not backing off. Not until the truth comes out and justice is served. As they left Caldwell's mansion, Liam and Logan walked beside Nathan, their expressions set with determination. What now? Liam asked. We take this to the next level, Nathan said. Because I'm done letting these people hide in the shadows. Logan's lips curled into a grim smile. Then let's bring the fight to them. Nathan nodded. They had come too far to turn back now. The truth was within reach, and they were ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead, truth and justice. The morning dawned cold and gray, thick clouds casting a somber shadow over the city. Nathan stood at his apartment window, watching the faint drizzle tap against the glass. Behind him, Liam and Logan sat at the dining table, reviewing notes and photographs they had pinned to a makeshift investigation board on the wall. The air was heavy with tension, but beneath it simmered a quiet resolve. They were close to unraveling the tangled web that had destroyed their family, and the people responsible were about to face justice. Nathan's phone buzzed on the counter, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Harper. Pierce, Nathan answered. You're not gonna believe this, Harper said grimly. We traced the fingerprints from the shelter break-in. They belong to a known enforcer for a private security firm, one with a history of doing dirty work for corporate clients. Nathan's jaw tightened. Let me guess. The firm has ties to Horizon Family Services. Bingo, Harper confirmed. Victor Caldwell might have been the face of the operation, but there's someone bigger pulling the strings, a man named Lawrence Voss. He was the financial architect behind the entire adoption network. Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. Where can I find him? He owns a private estate upstate, Harper said. But be careful, Pierce. This guy's dangerous, and he's got connections that run deep. Nathan hung up, his mind racing. We've got a name, Lawrence Voss, he told Liam and Logan. He's the one behind everything. Logan's expression hardened. Then what are we waiting for? The drive to Voss's estate was long and tense, the winding road flanked by towering trees that swayed in the wind. Nathan's unmarked car blended into the sparse traffic, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on them. As they approached the iron gates of the sprawling mansion, Nathan pulled over to the side of the road. We can't just walk in there, he said. This place will be heavily guarded. Liam grinned mischievously. Good thing we've got a few tricks up our sleeves. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Such as? Logan held up a small device with a blinking red light. Signal jammer. It'll knock out their security cameras for a few minutes, just long enough for us to get inside. Nathan's lips curled into a smile. Remind me never to underestimate you too. They scaled the fence and slipped through the meticulously manicured gardens, moving swiftly toward the main house. The jammer did its job, and the red surveillance lights blinked off as they crept past. Inside, the mansion was a maze of opulent hallways and grand rooms. The faint hum of conversation led them to a large study where Lawrence Voss stood behind a massive oak desk, his sharp features illuminated by the glow of a computer screen. "You've got guts showing up here," Voss said calmly, not even flinching as Nathan aimed his weapon at him. "But guts won't get you far." Nathan's voice was ice-cold. "It's over, Voss. We have evidence linking you to illegal adoption practices, fraud, and corruption. You're going down." Voss chuckled darkly. "You think you can take me down with some dusty old files? I own judges, politicians, and police chiefs. You're out of your league, detective." Liam stepped forward, his eyes blazing. "You ruined our family. You stole years of our lives. And you're going to pay for it." Voss's smile faded. "You must be the street rats who've been causing all this trouble." Nathan's patience snapped. "Enough." He pulled out a set of handcuffs. "You're under arrest." Before he could make a move, 2 armed guards burst into the room, their weapons trained on Nathan, Liam, and Logan. Voss smirked. "You didn't think I'd make it that easy, did you?" Nathan's mind raced. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but giving up wasn't an option. "Get down," he shouted, diving for cover as gunfire erupted. Liam and Logan moved with practiced agility, flipping over the heavy furniture and disarming one of the guards in a swift, brutal motion. Nathan fired a warning shot that sent the second guard scrambling for cover. The chaos was deafening, but within moments, silence fell over the room. The guards lay incapacitated, and Voss's confident facade had crumbled. Nathan strode forward, his breath steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Like I said, it's over." Voss's lips trembled. "You'll regret this." Nathan snapped the cuffs onto his wrists. "No, you will." Back at the precinct, Harper greeted them with a triumphant grin. "Heard you made quite the arrest." Nathan nodded, exhaustion tugging at his features. "It's done. Voss is in custody, and we've got enough evidence to bring down everyone involved." Liam and Logan stood beside him, their expressions a mix of relief and pride. Harper clapped Nathan on the shoulder. "You did good, Pierce. Real good." A week later, Nathan stood on the steps of the courthouse, watching as reporters swarmed around the case that had rocked the city. Voss's empire had crumbled, and justice was finally being served. Liam and Logan joined him, their faces bright with newfound hope. "We did it," Logan said quietly. Nathan smiled. "Yeah, we did." Liam's voice was filled with gratitude. "Thanks for not giving up on us." Nathan's throat tightened. "We're family. That's what we do." As they walked away from the courthouse, the weight of the past began to lift. The scars would always remain, but they had found something stronger, each other. And that was a victory no one could take away.